Special meeting of Washington, Missouri City Council, Monday, August 22nd, 2022, 6 p.m. Bear?
Here.
Briggs?
Here.
Coulter? Hydrich?
Here.
Holtmeyer?
Here.
Patke?
Here.
Reed?
Yep.
Wessels?
Yep.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Approval and adjustment of agenda, including consent agenda. You have the liquor license renewal for Paps West End LLC.
Need a motion, please.
Holtmeyer.
Motion by Holtmeyer,
Second. second
by Bear. Discussion. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
By your motion or by your vote, the approval passes.
Priority items, budget workshop.
Darren, before you start, I'd like to say something. Maybe you guys know this, but tonight we tell people where we value or where we choose to place our money is really important in telling people what we as a city government value. Okay? Do we put it in this raise that we're proposing? Do we build whatever? Do we fix a street? Do we buy a car? And in my mind, people take precedent. And that's all I'm going to say. So, thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. So I have two copies on, they look very much identical except for the date. One was from last year when we did the budget highlights from 21. I just thought it'd be an interesting thing for you to go back and take a look at some of the projects, what we completed as a result of approval of the budget from last year. And then we'll get into the highlights of what we've got proposed for this year. Also, Mary is handing out a more detailed document or whatever, if you want to go back and look and see what years things are proposed. That obviously has things spread out, I think, over the next 10 years. But just to go back to last year's budget highlights, last year, out of the general revenue fund, we incorporated the salary survey recommendations. We had a salary survey done at that time for all employee positions to include approximately $147,000 expense. That was the cost to implement that study. We also had on top of that to propose a 2 to 3% merit increase for employees. We revisited the Prop P funding for the police department. That included an annual payment for funding received in excess of the reserves. Additional officer for the police department, full-time assistant airport manager, which we hired in the spring. Part-time clerk for the parks department, which has been done. Part-time maintenance worker, one for parks maintenance, and we had budgeted for a 3.5% increase in sales tax. You will see what that number has turned into be for this year, whatever, when I get to that a little bit later. Out of the local use tax, which is also known as the Stormwater Fund, establish a program to identify and provide financial assistance to remove infiltration and inflow from the sanitary sewer main. Thanks to the engineering department, that program is in place and is being used by probably 20 or more. Oh, 10 to 12. Sorry, I apologize. Gotcha. Prioritize existing private residentially served stormwater retention basins. That's a carryover for this next year. Utilize. We did have this in the memo. Just so those of you, I know some of you are new, but just as this was the memo from last year to utilize contract labor to maintain the native plants along Highway 100. Utilize funds to slip line sanitary sewer mains to reduce infiltration, and we had projected about a 14% increase in the use tax, which by and far almost tripled that. I mean, we can talk about that a little bit later. On the water fund, we had additional maintenance worker 3 position that we added. Annual increase based on consumer price index, so we did adjust the rates, and we had that increase, which will be increased a couple of months from now, or at least a month or so. New water tower east end of town, which is a carryover. We're still working on that project, and we'll talk about that a little bit. Wastewater fund, additional maintenance worker 2 position. Capital improvement, sales tax fund, we saw the Phoenix Center Playground be built. We saw the Runza Infield Turf be built. Main stage roof was not due to the bids. We've talked about that. Airport hangars, and we moved that into this next year's budget. Waterworks renovation, which has been completed. And the new water tower east end of town, again, that $300,000 was coming from that capital improvement sales tax fund. So this is broken down by fund, so you can kind of see where the money is coming from for these projects. And just this wasn't all inclusive, but out of some of the highlights for your transportation sales tax, you had the Bush Creek Greenway, which is still, what that is. Try that. There we go.
You fixed Russians.
Yes.
Drone.
Anyway, so in the, let's see, in the Bush Creek Greenway, which we said is, the majority has been built. We're still waiting for that to be finished, but you can see the lion's share has been moved forward. And then we had miscellaneous street reconstruction, all the streets that we repaired. So I just thought it'd be a good idea to kind of go over those things that we did last year. As you can see, most of those were completed, and that's what we identified last year. So this year, let's get into that. We are out of the general fund. Obviously, the biggest thing is as the mayor talked about earlier, is wages for our employees and what we are looking at. And before, I'll get to some slides here in just a second. Let me just get through this general fund though first. But the idea is to incorporate an 8% cost of living increase for all employees, no merit increase due to the fact that you've got such a high cost of living increase. Annual payment to commissioned police officers, we always anticipate that to be around $4,000. Mary will have to wait and see what that number is. Let me do this again. Additional parks maintenance worker 1 position, as we've discussed. Go ahead and help the parks department and replace 2 part-time clerks and 1 part-time shelver at the library, and replace that with 1 full-time employee. That's got almost a zero net difference. And then a proposed 5% increase in the sales tax as a projection. So with that being said, let's get back to the cost of living increase for all employees. So as most of you know, we have been, this is probably unprecedented time that we've had this type of cost of living increase in quite some time. I don't know when the last time we were over 8%, but if you can see, this is what we pull when we adjust the water rates every year now, is we get the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we get the CP, Consumer Price Index, out of the St. Louis metropolitan area. And so that's what we base it on. And we base it on, I think, for the water rates in August, isn't that? Because I think it's specified in the ordinance. But with that, the purpose of this is that you'll see ever since 2021 in November, we've been at 8%. So this just isn't a spike. This has been going on ever since November of 2021, that we've had over an 8% cost of living. So I don't have to sit there and repeat what the news tells you every day. This has been a discussion topic for quite some time. But just to show you where we pull that information from. So to give you a little bit more, this is their 6-year wage history and what we've done for the employees. Take off these cheaters, they don't help me here. 2016 to 2017, what you see on the left, we always use June because that's, in order to go ahead, that's the latest numbers by the time we're able to bring you our draft of our budget document. And so we've always used, like I said, the month of June. And so if you see, that's on this left column, this is the CPI for St. Louis. And this is what we have. So we have, you can see how low it was from 20 down on to 17. You had 1.2, anywhere between, you know, we were just anywhere between a little over 0.2 to all the way up to 1.6. Very minimal amount. But what you look at, we had years where we did salary surveys. We try to do those every 3 to 4 years. Prior to when I started city administrator position, we had discussed we need to go ahead and make sure that the employees' wages are up to date. Prior to that, I can't remember the last time we had a compensation study that was done prior to 2017. We took, at that time, we hired a consultant to go in. They reviewed every single job description that we had. They also went ahead, interviewed majority of the employees. And then they went back and they came back with a study that said, okay, this is where those salaries need to be. And when they did that, unfortunately for us, since it had been so long since we had looked at that study, we were not able to go ahead and complete that within one budget year. As a matter of fact, it took 2 years, and then we still had a handful of employees after that we still needed to go ahead because of their increase of what the salary study had indicated was so high, we just couldn't afford it in one budget. That's not an ideal situation that we like to be in. So, and then you can see we didn't have a cost of living or we didn't have a merit. It was all based on let's just get this compensation study done. 17, we had 1.6 CPI. We did not have a salary study done at that time. You had a cost of living increase of 2.1, as you can see, and then it was 0.9, so it was a total of 3%. So what happens, just for those of you that are new on the council, I don't have to talk about cost of living, we've been talking about that, but on the merit side, we have a performance evaluation for all of our employees that are department heads complete. It's the same one. Based upon your score, that determines what percentage of that merit increase you can get. So that's why we say it's not a blanket that everybody gets a merit increase. That's not the case. When we have had those, it's all based on what their score is. And it can be up to whatever the magic number that we budget for. So in this case, we had 0.9 from 17 to 18, and that was a total of what you could get up to 3%. In 18 and 19, you had a CPI of 1, no salary study, there's your COLA, there's your merit, 2.8 total. Next year, you had very low cost of living, and then you had, so we had a 1 for the cost of living, and then we had a 2% for the merit for a total of 3. Last year was a little bit different, as you can see. So you can see the cost of living started to go up, and at that time frame, it was 6.1. However, we had the benchmark, we had a study done, and it's called benchmark. It's a little bit different because they didn't have to go back and review every single one of the job descriptions. They just took those job descriptions, went out into the market and said, what is the value of a maintenance worker 1 based upon these cities that we go and we compare with, as well as a police officer, whatever the case may be, every one of the positions. So they didn't have to go back and review everything and interview employees. They just went back and did that study. Well, when they came back, we did not, fortunately, since there was just 3 to 4 years since we had the last study, we were able to incorporate that within the budget. We also had the situation where we tacked on a 3% merit, because in that benchmark study, there was about 20% of our employees that did not receive an increase as a result of that study, because the market, they were right at the market rate. Some of those were employees that we had hired later. We tried to compensate, get them in the door at the market rate that we thought that they needed to be based upon our grade schedule, and so that worked in our favor. But there were some that were just eligible then for the 3%, so it was whatever their performance evaluation. The benchmark study was done in the winter of 21, and it was completed, I want to say February or March. However, from March to the time when we were putting the budget together, that's when the CPI started going up. So we heard it from some employees last year with regards to, what are you going to do for cost of living? And our argument was, we can't do anything this year due to the fact that we've got the benchmark study. This is going to help offset a lot of that for some people. But unfortunately, like I said, 20% did not receive anything out of that, but they were eligible for the merit increase. So we had a gap there that we didn't pick up at last year, but we did get the study done, and we got it all put in one budget year. This year, here's where we're at in June, 8.4. And again, like I said on the previous slide, you saw that it's been going on since November. We did not have a salary study. We're not proposing, what's proposed, this should be, is the 8% is what we're proposing. We're not proposing a merit increase, and so it would just be a flat 8%. I'd love to go ahead and do a merit. As we stated in the email that I sent out to the employees, as well as you guys got a copy of, our goal is to always try to keep up with the cost of living first, and then see what we can do to go ahead and do a merit on top of that. So that's kind of how we've approached salaries probably for the last 6 years. If you want to look at the good news that we also, the good news that we have is that our sales tax has been up. And if you look in the last 6 years, you can follow the graph over there to the right, but if you look at the numbers right here, oops, sorry. New thing, trying to get it zapped out on me. Okay, Sal, I guess you don't know how to get this. Oh, there we go. Okay. Boom. Not too many slides. Pretty easy. Here we go. Sorry. Okay, so right here, this percentage growth. That's what your sales tax has done over since 2016, 2017, in that time frame up to the current. This is what you're looking at to date so far. Obviously, we're waiting for the last month to come in, which you have 7.74. But you can see how this has climbed. You had a spike here in this year, but then these two numbers, it was below what we had projected, or below what it was the previous year, I guess I should say. And you can see the spike over here on the right in the graph. But we've been going up. So I guess what we're trying to say is you do have the revenue to go ahead and do this 8% increase for this cost of living. The money is there. I can't say, obviously, that we're going to have this kind of luck with that sales tax all of these years, because you can see what we did in previous years. But you do have the revenue this year. And just to give you an idea of what this does for some of our employees or whatever, you've got part-time clerks that you've got that are $12.69. That increase will get them to $13.71. Administrative assistant goes from $16.61 to $17.94. Maintenance worker 1, that's the position that we're proposing to add, for example, in the Parks Department. Those are in our Street Department, Public Works, et cetera. That would go from $15.09 to $16.30. And then police officers, at the base rate, this does not include their bonus, but it's the $23.48 an hour and would go up to $25.36. So it gives you an idea. Shauna has also reminded me this afternoon that the minimum wage, I think, is slated to go into effect
January 1st, $12 an hour, Missouri minimum wage.
Missouri minimum wage, January 1st, $12 an hour. So that's also something that we have to go ahead and incorporate into that. So we wanted to let you know that. So that's kind of the information we wanted to pass along for discussion tonight with regards to the cost of living wages. And then if you'll allow me, what we can do is let's go through the rest of the budget highlights on the bottom of the page and flip it over. On the local use tax, again, we're going to propose to go ahead and prioritize the existing private residentially served stormwater retention basins. You have those basins for those of you that are new in the council. The city has long had the policy that as a subdivision has to go ahead and create, when they create lots, they have to go ahead and hold back the stormwater. Those lot owners are responsible by the subdivision plat to go ahead and maintain those basins. It didn't matter if it was commercial, if it was residential, et cetera. We have looked at and discussed, I've discussed it with John, about there is maybe a priority system where the city can go ahead and take over some of those, and we can determine, try to objectively say which ones are ones that benefit the city more so than others, because maybe it's just the larger area to impact, et cetera, whatever. But we'll take a look at that and see if we can go ahead and rank those. We wanted to do that last year, but we just didn't get a chance. So, with that, sorry. Also, utilize funds to slip line the sanitary sewer mains to reduce infiltration, and then we got a 15% increase in what we're proposing for the use tax. I believe the use tax is 40% increase over last year, just so you know. We can't expect that trend to continue forever, but we anticipate that due to the fact that you've got a lot of major retailers. I've had this discussion with Mark. He's always asked me because he thought 14% was pretty bold to predict last year. But we think a lot of that has to do with the fact that more retailers are having to report that, and probably there's mechanisms in place for them to go ahead and do that. So we're just getting better, accurate reporting is probably what we anticipate. On the water fund, you've got the annual rate increase that we talked about. That'll be up in a couple of months. And the new water tower east of town. This is not the total cost. Again, I've broken down these highlights based on the funds that they're in. And so that's the portion that would come out of the water fund. Capital Improvement Sales Tax Fund. You've got the airport hangars. You can see the costs. I'm not going to go through all these numbers if you have any questions. You have City Hall renovations. There is the elevator replacement that's been on the list for us to go ahead and do. We've got a facilities group. We've asked a couple council members to sit in on that. I think Padkey, or Jeff, and also Mike are also, sorry. Stop it. Turn it off. Anyway, the downtown Washington utility burial, you have $285,000 there. New water tower, east end of town, again, that same water tower, $300,000 is coming out of your capital improvement sales tax. You've got the front and main TIF infrastructure, which is $1 million. Some of that's coming out of the TIF fund, though, too. So, you also have the skate park improvements that have been a carryover. We want to go ahead and get that project done. I've talked to Wayne about that. Finish up the Phoenix Playground with $15,000 for the fence. And you have the library HVAC, which we have just got another email in from Verigy today, hoping that we can go ahead and get a meeting set up here shortly and get a better cost estimate of what that's going to take. But what you see there would be $200,000. We had a savings from the energy efficiency from the improvements that we did here at City Hall. So you'd have $200,000 that you could go ahead and use towards that. We're proposing for that HVAC system. And then in the transportation sales tax, John's got a lot of project. I was going to ask him today, how's he planning on getting all this stuff done? But that's okay. You've got street reconstruction. He's upped that to $1 million, as you saw in the previous year. That was $630,000. I think he's talked to you before about the fact of material costs. The Riverfront Trail Connection, it's a 50-50 grant, $400,000, so we're on for $200,000. You got the 3rd Street Overlay Project that's coming up this year. You can see the project, you can see that it's almost $1 million, that's a total. Our local match is $171,000. You've got the Jefferson Street resurfacing, I think that's engineering, correct, John? $100,000 this year. Westlink Drive, you've got that resurfacing. What's left to go ahead and resurface. The reason why that's less than the total amount we've spent money, I assume, already on engineering fees. Front Street reconstruction, ADA improvements, High Street extension, Earthcrest extension, Rabbit Trail. Some of these are, we've gone to Franklin County Road and Bridge Fund to go ahead and claim the money that's been sitting in their account for quite some time, to go ahead and get some of these extensions and connections that we've talked about. Don Avenue, Pottery Road, $200,000. South Point Road, our contribution to that, towards that project. 2nd Street from Jefferson to Cedar, and Main Street. Parks, you do have the Riverfront Playground that's being proposed. There's a donation that's going to be, supposed to be raised over 2 years. The total for that is $88,400, but $85,000 is being, of that is being pledged to be donated. And the library development funds, pulling $200,000 out of there towards that HVAC system. And then finally, ARPA funds. This is to assist. I don't have dollar amounts on those because we're still waiting. But that will assist the projects that we have, including the library HVAC, the water tower, the industrial development, and obviously those are dependent upon grants as we get those. We'll always try to go for those, but if we need to supplement it with ARPA, we will. So that is the highlights of what's being proposed for the budget. We're open to questions. Obviously, the department heads are here. Some of the other key staffers here tonight. So if you have any questions, we're open.
Gentlemen.
Yes, I was wondering, on the 8%, which I understand where you're getting it, do we know what other companies in town are doing some of the, especially our larger ones who have, a large employment?
I heard your question. I did not get a chance to go ahead and ask other industries or at least private sector in town. I did talk to the school district and the college. Their budget is started July 1st. They wanted higher than what they received, but they only received 4% for their employees across the board for that. The school district was a little bit more complicated, but it was a total of 4%. Shauna also got some information from some cities. I don't know if you got that. You know that information off the top of your head that you could. Come on up.
Evening, Council. I reached out to a few municipalities that I have connections with. it's hard with, many of them have fiscal years that start different times than us, and based on where we are with the cost of living occurring right now. But Richmond Heights, for example, they have a step grade plan where everybody gets 3.58% per step every year, and they did 5% on top of that for cost of living, so a total of 8.35%. And then Manchester reached back out to me, and they are at 5% as well. And then the county of St. Charles was around the 8%. So, and I'm waiting on more, but that's all I have right now. A lot of them already had it established earlier in the year when the January, for example, was their plan year. So that's the information that I have as of today on municipalities. Darren may know more about union.
What's what? Oh, the union one that was in the paper, their budget too, they had a 5% increase that started as again, their budget is July 1st to June 30th. So.
I ask that just because I think, you know, as people are looking at it and all of our citizens are looking at, and probably wondering, you know, by comparison, looking at what they'll be getting from their local employers and so forth.
I think one of the things that also that needs to be brought up so that you can see, I think when we showed you the studies and the years that we had the studies, back in 2017, like we said, this took over 2 years to go ahead and fully implement. The concern is we're going to probably go ahead and submit for another benchmark study or maybe a full compensation we got to determine, but a study will probably, it's not in this year's budget, but we're looking to do it in next year's budget. The concern will be how far will we be back if we don't keep up with the cost of living, and is it going to take us, like I said earlier, ideally we do not want to take 2 budget cycles to go ahead and bring people up to speed, because then you're already behind a year after that. So the idea was the funds are here, you have the ability to go ahead and do that.
Here's my deal. I'm all for everybody making more money. We all want it. We all need it. This is my first deal discussing all this. You got the monkey on our back. So here's my 2 cents, is that you department heads know who you got. You know who the good worker is. You know who the bad worker is. You know the guy that started off like a ball of fire and fizzled out 6 months or a year later. So my question is, I don't know if we're making a decision here tonight or not.
We're not.
Or
This is a
whatever.
discussion
It's
purpose.
all discussion. You know, I think you should put some of this back on the city heads that evaluate their employees. I mean, everywhere I've been, you evaluate your employees.
We will still evaluate the employees. That
But this is
performance
across the
evaluation-
board.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
That's
So
because it's cost of
where the
living.
trouble comes in for me, is that, you know, let's just say you got a guy that started off like gangbusters, and he's not so much no more.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe some of this should fall back to them a little bit on evaluation as far as whether or not they need the 8%, or you know what, maybe the guy's not so much. Maybe he only needs 4, okay? And if that bad seed decides to go somewhere else and find some other employment, so be it. We're looking for good people. I think we got good people, but I don't know, like Tony knows and like Kevin knows and Wayne knows. You know, they know where the problems lie, so do you. So I don't think it's 100% fair to lay it all on us and go across the board. I think we need to evaluate that a little closer and take some of the monkey off our back. I'm all for it. I want everybody to make money. But, you know, that's my 2 cents. Hello,
Hello.
somebody.
I would, go ahead, Jeff.
No, I said we're letting it soak in, what Dwayne
Right,
says.
right.
Makes sense to me.
Myself, thought about this all afternoon yesterday after we got the text message, then the email, and you know, my thought is this, and this is nothing personal, this is nothing, anything. We have to run this city like it's a business, and we need to. And every year, every time we do this, I keep seeing the employees that are making $50,000 and below only get this high. But then the employees that are up around $100,000, they're jumping way up. If we want to play fair, and in my eyes, if we want to play fair, I think, and we can do a scale system where, you know, if 40 to 50,000 and below get 8%, 50 to 70 get 6%, and 70 above get 4%. That's what I propose, and that's what I've been thinking about, because that's where our big turnover is in the lower dollar amount on the money, and just my 2 cents on it. I mean, everybody's got their opinions, and that's mine. So that's what I would like to see, because I would like to see the people that are in the trenches get a little bit more, and we need to give them a little bit more. We need to give everybody more, like Mr. Reed said. We need to give everybody more, and I want more. Everybody wants more, but what can we afford, and what makes sense? That's my 2 cents.
I'd like to give my input, if that's okay. So we've talked, employees do share things with me and Darren throughout the years, and I would like to stand here and say we have a workforce that has stayed with us through a pandemic. We have high-value employees that we have had the benefit of them sticking with us through the pandemic. And we had a lot of employees who didn't get laid off. They kept working because they were essential. They didn't get to sit at home and collect unemployment because they were non-essential. They didn't, we didn't have to do layoffs. Everyone kept busy. They found things to do. They kept their nose down, their shoulder into the grindstone, and they kept us through this pandemic. And they committed to the city and the residents and the community that they work for. They take a lot of pride in this community. They take a lot of pride in the work they do. And we did not see a high turnover during this pandemic. There were employees that they had to adjust. We asked them to work 410s. We asked them to shift coming into the office, remote work. Can you work 3 days here and your colleague is going to be home? And we shifted so that we wouldn't get all COVID at the same time. And the employees changed with us. They took on that responsibility. They didn't just say, well, no, I think you should do a layoff so we can sit at home, and I'll make more at home being laid off than I would if I come in and work every day. They still worked at we got the same value from those employees, and they've stuck with us through this time. We value all employees that work for the city, whether you are out in the field or you sit in an office, whether you're patrolling the streets or you're answering calls. All of those employees are important to the city. If we didn't need those positions, we shouldn't have them in the budget in the first place. But every position that we have hired are important, and I don't think that it's wise to classify employees as more or less important to the running of the city. It takes every position we have, and if we as an organization don't feel that that's necessary, then we should evaluate who we have hired. But if every position that we currently have hired is important and valuable and needed, then I think we need to value them and tell them that we appreciate them. They could have bailed. We are in the midst of the Great Resignation where people are leaving left and right. It's taking months to fill positions right now, and we've worked really hard to get the right people in the right places. And the staff that we have right now, I do feel like they are the right people in the right places. We have disciplinary measures in place now where we've trained our staff, and if there's a problem, we address it when it happens, not down the road or only once a year. And so I would like to stand here as a advocate for what we're presenting. I understand that there could be some reservations on the dollar amount, the percentage, things of that nature. But I think it's important to remember the people behind why we're doing this and what those people provide to the city and the community at large.
I appreciate that. That's good. I'm all over that, but I do think that if you talk to a city head one-on-one outside of this room, you might have a different opinion of an employee. not singling anybody out here, I'm just saying that, you know, I like what you're saying, you know, 8% across the board. Okay, everybody's in favor of that, I know that. But I'm sure there's a weak link in the operation.
And it's our job as leadership to
I've
find
done
those
this all
links,
my life.
to find those weak links, and to either, it's our responsibility as leadership of the day-to-day leadership that you see here, to find those weak links and either coach them to be better or part ways with them. That's what you have us for. And I will tell you that the administrative staff and department heads are,
They're 100% on board.
they are on board with taking care of the people they have. And when we have a problem, they know what to do, and we know the internal, my door's open, Darren's door is opened. I meet with department heads frequently to discuss if they have an issue, what are the disciplinary steps that can be made. So I'm not saying they all do, Mr.
Yeah.
Reed, but, you know, but we have processes in place that work, and we've used them. And, you know, the goal is to keep the good people we have and encourage them being vested in this community and in this city and in this organization.
See, we have to trust the people that we got in charge.
Don't
here.
argue with that.
And they're the ones that know what's going on. We're sitting up here and they're telling us, and we have to
I'm
trust.
talking about 35 years of construction.
I don't care
but
how
I
many years you got in
understand-
construction. Let me speak,
Go ahead.
okay? These people, I've been around them for 12 years now, and then the people we have now are 10 times better than what we had. I'll tell you that right now. And I trust all these people, heads, to tell us what's going wrong or not. So I think if they say they want the 8% across the board, I think we should give it to them.
You poured a lot of concrete too, haven't you, Joe?
Yes,
You ever had a weak link?
yes.
Okay. They're out there.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
I know, but
Okay.
I trust them to weed them out.
Yeah.
We have a different,
That's why we're here.
yes.
Well, I think to what Sean is saying, retention of employees is very important. There's no doubt about that. But also new hires. As a Parks liaison, I've went through this for not just Wayne, but the previous Parks director, trying to find help, trying to find summer help, trying to find full-time help. We always had openings. We couldn't match. Sean alluded to the fact that during a pandemic, they stayed home and they made more money than they can working to come out to the Parks Department and pull weeds for a summer or whatever it may be. Street Department guys the same way. Those, as Dwayne said, or Mark said, in the trenches. If they're digging holes and fixing water lines, then, they need to be compensated. And the graphs show it. There's no doubt about that. I don't think we need to be the follower in the fact that 8% or do what union does or do what someone else does. If it's the right thing to do and our employees need to keep up, then that's the right thing to do. I have no problem with that. Mark, to your point, as far as the dollar figure that they make and then scale back, we had a benchmark study, and that's something that, if that's the route we want to go down, that's somewhere if you reach a certain, that if you're a level 15 or you're a level 20, we use that benchmark study to compensate our employees. If that's where we want to, if there's a drawing line of 8%, 6%, 4%, maybe we look at that benchmark study to show who's there. You know what I mean? Above a 25, it's 4, above a 20, whatever that number may be, as opposed to saying if you get to 40,000, now you make less on your, your COLA. You know what I'm saying? Just an idea. If that's something we go down that road, we use our benchmark study. We paid for that study to do that.
Right.
So again, retention is important, hiring is important. So 8%, especially from the bottom, I think is definitely there. I do have a holdup with, like I said, the top, because it just seems like, Mark alluded to, the top is a bigger gap, the bottom is a smaller gap, So I would be in favor of maybe looking into that, but I do think that those people need.
You have to remember,
Just
cost
at the
of
bottom.
living, typically, they're going to be across the board. So if you're more in favor of merit-based only, then that's something we should look at separately. But if you're talking about keeping your employees up with the cost of living, then it doesn't seem right to say your cost of living is is less than mine, so you should get more, if that's what in fact you're
I'm
saying.
making $120,000 a year. I can afford to go out and buy a car better than I can somebody that's making 40. So that's my point.
I'm just alluding to the fact that the
well-
cost of living is the cost of living.
Exactly.
So
I
gas
get it.
is
But
still
when
the
you're
same for
making-
you and I.
Right.
So, and that's what we hear from employees. They don't, I wouldn't want to put a dollar amount, because we have some employees that have been here a long time, and you might damage them by putting a cap on a dollar amount because they've been here a long time and they're making over whatever arbitrary number you use. So we would have people in multiple pay grades that could be making different amounts because one just started and one's been here 25 years.
Well, and I think that on a normal year, we'd sit here and say, we ask for a 4% right now, and I don't think we even have this discussion. I think it's all good. It's just the fact that an 8% is a very large number,
And
and it's
that's
hard to,
unprecedented.
it's hard to swallow at one time, at least in my opinion, from the last week. That's just the, again, I can't say no one doesn't deserve it, and I'd love to have everyone have it. It's just, it's a very hard pill to swallow for me to, you know, it shows. We went from 2%, 3%,
Right.
and now it's 8%. I get it. And I know it's a different bear. I get it. I'm not getting 8%. So to sit here and give everybody here 8% just across the board is a tough decision. I'll say it again. I'm not saying they don't deserve it. I think I deserve it. But, you know, so to run it as a business, to do it the right way, it's just hard to make that all at one time. That's all. That's why it's a lot of thought process on my part.
You know, we're working through contracts right now in my trade. We're not getting 8% either, you know, because we know what's happening. We all know we're in a recession right now. We're driving right into it. And if somebody don't think we are, you better wake up. So I think we better watch the dollars now, so next year we're not going, oh, boy, now what are we gonna do? That's my thought.
I just want to repeat my purpose, my point in saying that before is, you know, we still are representing the citizens of the city of Washington. And I think when those people, and they should know what we're doing, and when they hear what we're doing, I really think we need to look at what's happening. I don't know, pick the top 10, 12 employers in town, in large numbers, you know, the big employers, and pick out and see what they're doing. Because I think, because if you take those, you're probably looking at what, half of the working force in Washington? You know, if they're only getting, I'll be ridiculous, if they're only getting 2%, they're not gonna like the fact that we're giving 8%, you know, and it's their tax money. So I think we could at least run that by and get a comparison.
We can do that.
I think my biggest concern is the gap from the top to the bottom is going to get a lot bigger. That's my biggest concern about this, the 8%.
I know that some of you that are newly elected, one of the first questions that you had was, see, the city seems to be running very well. That was the comment that was made. What do we do to go ahead and retain those employees? You asked that. Mike asked that. Chad, you might have even asked that. So you know, it's like I said, you get a crack at me. I'm the only guy you get to vote on an ordinance. The rest of these, I don't know what you're telling them when you say that just because you think that they can go ahead and buy a vehicle easier. Yeah, they do. They deserve it. They've worked their butts off. So remember that.
No, you're taking that out of context.
No, I'm
Aaron.
not. You basically.
I said somebody at $120,000.
Right.
And somebody, you're talking cost of living, I understand cost of
Right.
living, but somebody at 120, it's not gonna hit them as hard as the man, the person, excuse me, at 40. It was just my opinion.
Understand.
Everybody can buy a car, but it's just gonna be a little easier at the higher rate. And that's the only thing, is like Chad was saying, everybody's saying, the higher ups are gonna get the bigger amount of money, and I think we need to start taking care of the,
And we do. Every time we get a benchmark study that we put in, every 3 to 4 years, we're raising that. We're trying to go ahead and get those people hired. It's not just a matter of, it's trying to go ahead and get a salary that we can go ahead and get people. And that's what the challenge has been. We've been faced with that just like a lot of the employers around town. So we know that it's a big leap. I understand that. The reason why we showed you this stuff, though, we know that you guys can see those numbers with CPI. What the 6 o'clock news doesn't tell you was what you're getting in sales tax over the last few years. So,
Do you think the reason we're having problem getting people to hire is because our rate's too low, our starting rates?
yeah. I mean, fast food restaurants probably are, I mean, they can go work in an air-conditioned, I guess, environment if they want to. They may be frying wings all day.
Right. And see, that's where I have, the only
But-
problem that I have.
Yeah, but the
is
problem.
the gap gets bigger.
But that's not gonna help Wayne go ahead and hire somebody, to go ahead. I mean, we used to have probably half a dozen to 10 different, part-time employees.
Yeah.
That would help during the summer. So you guys ask, how come things aren't getting done? Well, the problem is you don't have enough. How many people did we have working for the parks? We got 3. We had 3 total. And I feel that we were lucky we got that.
Well, I don't think.
They don't want to, I mean, and that's the problem. You can't do it.
8% for that, for that worker. Nobody's denying that up here, about the 8% for that worker.
Yes, and we have 3 openings in the police department.
Guys, like every other government business in our community, we're in an arms race for talent, okay? And part of attracting a talented individual where they're starting out, like we all did, my starting salary in the Air Force was $12 an hour, okay? But I was okay with that because I knew that if I kept my nose clean, nose to the grindstone, I was going to progress. Just like the folks that work for us. There's a path that they have to make more money if they want to and if they put in the time. And to me, that's because of the leadership that we have. We're also in an arms race to keep our leaders, okay? Because they all know that they could go somewhere else, drive 30 minutes maybe, and make a heck of a lot more than they do with us. And to me, Darren hadn't said that, but to me, that's a big concern because we can't lose any of our leaders right now. And so, you talk about splitting it at 40 or 50 or 60 mark, and I get that. I do. But for me, leadership is everything, everything. And if we don't have good leaders here, which we are fortunate to have right now, this city's in trouble. And so, for me, they need to be compensated appropriately, and that's, my book is 8%. So that's where I'm coming from. But I see where you guys stand, and I get it. But for me, it's got to be across the board, and it's got to be 8%. So more discussion.
So the next steps, we'll have this for your workshop, again, the first meeting in September. The actual ordinance to go ahead and adopt the budget will be the second meeting in September. So just to give you, we've got some more time to go ahead and have some discussion on that. So the only thing we do need to do tonight, though, is set the tax rate, and so that's the next thing on your agenda.
Public hearing, City of Washington tax levy.
Okay, so included in your packet tonight is the information for the public hearing. The assessed valuation for the City of Washington, the total assessed valuation from Franklin County for the proposed tax year came in at $410,567,361. So based on Missouri state statutes, the permitted 2022 tax levy for the general operating levy for the City of Washington is .5641 per $100 of assessed valuation. So for the fiscal year 2023, for the general fund, that will be approximately $2,316,010 of tax revenue. And compared to last year, that's basically an increase of $107,320, which is basically 4.8%.
Mary, what was the rate last year?
Same thing.
Same rate?
Yep. And then for the library district, the assessed valuation per Franklin County is $161,666,428, which for the 2022 tax levy for the library district would be .1909 per $100 of assessed valuation. And that results in tax revenue for 2023 of $308,621, which is approximately $11,380 increase, which is 3.8%. So both tax rates combined, the maximum allowed by Missouri state statutes for total tax, for both of the total tax levies would be .7550 per $100 of assessed valuation. So that would be what I would be proposing, would be to assess that at the maximum allowed. So,
Mary, do you know, I know our library district, a lot of, for the new guys, can you tell them where, do you know where the library district lines are? Darren, do you know? Like, because
I do know it goes to Stafford. Stafford, I know that.
North 14th Street in our local, everything south of Scenic Creek.
Just want you guys to know that.
Yeah, Nelson's at the library building.
Thank you.
I think it's the right thing to do to keep the tax levy the same as last year. And if there's a public hearing, but feel free.
So just looking back through history as a new guy, looks like we went down 2-3 years ago. Does that sound right? And it's held the same. This would be the third year maybe at this rate. I'm testing your memory,
Second
I'm
year
sorry.
at this rate.
So
But,
last year went down.
yeah, if assessed valuation goes up, then the tax rate goes down. Because they have an inverse relationship.
Okay.
Because you basically, your tax revenue, the way Hancock Amendment works, is the tax revenue stays basically the same. But you can only grow based on your new construction and anything that's annexed in. So if you have in a non-assessment year, or in an assessment year, then if your assessed valuation goes up, then it usually drives your
goes down.
tax rate
Yep.
down. So a lot of times they can work different ways.
There's not a lot of creativity in the whole.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So sometimes when you're like, well, why did my tax rate go down, but my taxes went up? That's usually what
know.
we hear a lot of.
Okay.
It doesn't always work that way. But,
Thank you.
and then, just so you know, the new construction this year, I have that too. Sometimes people ask that. For the general fund was $3,102,229, and for the library district, it was $1,105,852. So that was the amount of new construction that got added onto the tax rolls. So,
We'll entertain a motion.
It's a public hearing.
Public hearing.
Sorry. To the floor. Anyone wish to comment?
Seeing none, I'll make a motion.
Motion by Patke, second by Holtmeyer. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. By your vote, tax rate is set.
An ordinance levying and imposing the calendar year 2022 a tax upon all real estate and taxable tangible property in the city of Washington, Missouri for general municipal purposes and for a free public library.
Patke.
Introduced by Patke. Discussion. Okay.
An ordinance levying and imposing for the calendar year 2022 a tax upon all real estate and taxable tangible property in the city of Washington, Missouri for general municipal purposes and for a free public library. Holtmeyer.
Aye.
Patke.
Yes.
Briggs.
Yes.
Wessels. Hydrich.
Aye.
Reed.
Yes.
Bear.
Yes.
By your vote, Tax levy is set.
Report of department heads, Show Me Zero program agreement.
Good evening, council. I promise this portion will be painless for you, so much easier than before. So in your packet, you see a letter from me. A couple years ago, we identified that our current, and I won't get technical because I'm not real technical with this anyway, but we have essentially it's surveying equipment that we use to map out crime scenes, accident reconstructions, things of that nature. We identified that it was 15-plus years old and it needed to be replaced. We sought funding through a grant source and was denied, but Sergeant Grissom was very diligent and found another funding source recently through MoDOT, and we were awarded that grant. So I'm asking you to, asking for approval to move forward with that. There is one thing I'd like to point out, though. At the time when he submitted the grant, the quote we received for the equipment, training, things of that nature was $41,762. Since that time, since grants take a while to be approved, the cost of equipment has gone up by $1,780. So that will be the portion that the city is responsible for, but otherwise it's a 100% grant.
It's a total station,
Total station.
yeah.
Yeah, you know what that is, I'm sure.
Yes.
Now, the one we're looking at getting is robotic. So currently, the one we have, it requires 2 officers to operate. You have to have one, I call it holding a stick, that has a prism. The other one operates the total station. With this one, you just have one operator. He has the stick essentially, and he's able to operate the total station from that location as he plots points. So, any questions?
No. I'll make a motion.
Motion by Hydrich.
I'll second it.
Second by Briggs. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passed by your motion. The Show Me program is agreed to.
Well, that just moved to council, right?
Did it?
This isn't a council meeting, is it? Yes, it is. Oh, okay, that's passed. Okay, I thought it was moved to council, I'm sorry.
I just need a motion to adjourn.
Oh, just real quick, I'd like to add one thing to our discussion from earlier. What, Joe? Oh, this won't take long, Joe. I just would like to ask, because a few of us, we talk here and there, and there's so many of us that, including myself, we don't have the up-to-date. I would like to have a list of our employees and their salaries, so everybody kind of has an idea what we're doing. So I'd like to, maybe you could send us an email and state what they're making, and so everybody kind of has an idea what department heads and everybody's making, so.
In relation to
Bingo.
this,
In relation to this 8%, and, and actually, if you can email it to us, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Okay, anything else, guys?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
second.
By Holtmeyer, second by Patke to adjourn. Aye. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Let's get out of here.
If we did the 60,000 blow, look how many.